everyone. Welcome to Here We Are, Brattleboro's community talk show. I'm Wendy O'Connell. We are back again, and today our guest is Jerry Carbone. So many of us know Jerry from his 37 years at Brooks Memorial Library. 22 of those years he was the director. He also now has a thriving and timely business, Whetstone Brook Genealogy Services. Jerry's also been an integral part of our Brattleboro Literary Festival since its first year in 2002, and the Brattleboro Words Project. Jerry's also known to be a fabulous cook. Welcome, Jerry.
Well, thank you, Wendy. You're really making me feel old now.
Yeah, when you start using double digits,
I know, yeah, double digits.
Yeah.
37, wow, okay.
It's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah,
I know.
yeah.
Yeah, you came
Almost
here.
half my life.
Yeah, you came here in 78.
78. To
78.
Brattleboro.
To Brattleboro,
Yeah,
right.
landed in Vermont in 77, but Brattleboro in 78.
Yeah, and you came for the job at Brooks?
Once we got in Vermont, yes, but that wasn't the original destination.
Was it skiing or what
Not
was
at
it?
all. It was just an adventure. I was at the University of Texas in Austin for my library degree, and Kathy and I, my wife, just said we wanted to see the country, and we picked Vermont.
Really?
Yeah, neither of us had been further east than the Mississippi River. I went 1 year to school in Nebraska, but that was it. We're originally from Denver, Colorado. So.
Yeah. That's so interesting.
Yeah.
So it was almost a dartboard
It
decision.
was. It was. I don't know if we were reading Vermont Life like so many people do,
Yeah.
but it was just looked like a state that we wanted to visit. But I have to tell you, the day that we left Denver, there was a huge storm brewing, and it was moving east, and we were just ahead of it. So we said, well, the storm is blowing us out of Colorado. And when we got to Burlington, which was about 5 days later because we were stopping to see friends and everything, we were in a guest house there, and we were looking at each other in bed, and we said to one another, we could just turn around and go back. What are we doing here? But we didn't, and so we went from Burlington to Rutland and then to Brattleboro.
Good choices.
Yeah.
All the way around.
Yeah.
When you were a kid, what kinds of things were you interested in? What did you do as a kid?
Well, I read a lot. I played baseball, sandlot baseball and high school baseball. Played the trumpet in the high school band. And there was a little lake near our house, which we called the pond, so we used to ice skate there in the wintertime.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
and we would go out to eat at my aunt's restaurant. I had restaurants on both sides of the family, so we would choose, when to go to which restaurant. So,
that's pretty great.
Yeah.
And so both sides of your family are Italian.
Yep.
And both sides were immigrants who came here from Italy, first or second generation?
Yeah, my dad was first generation. He immigrated from the province of Calabria, which is, if you envision Italy as a boot, it's the toe of the boot. So it's southern Italy.
Very southern.
And then my grandparents on my mother's side, my mother was born here in the States, but my grandparents came from Potenza, which is like in the middle part of like above the arch of the boot.
Right. And when you were growing up, both families were close by, so you had relationships with them.
Yep.
Were there immigrant stories? Were you aware of your family coming to America from a different country?
Yes, there were stories. And the one that really got me interested in my later genealogical studies was this story about the unification of Italy in the 1860s, and that my great-grandfather, who was named Rocco, my father's name is Rocco Carbone, was a, I don't know what you would call him, either a guerrilla fighter or just a rabble-rouser in southern Italy against Garibaldi, who unified the country, but he started in Sicily and his troops marched northward. And that was this story that he was captured by Garibaldi, then later released. And then later there was a film made with Ernest Borgnine called Italiani Briganti, the Italian Brigands. And in that movie supposedly featured this great-grandfather.
Interesting.
So, I don't know whether this is all, fiction or whether the movie influenced my, my parents and family thinking that, oh yeah, that's your great-grandfather. So I've been trying to validate that story.
And you haven't yet.
I haven't yet. I haven't yet.
Do you think that that's part of your interest in genealogy, the fact that you had a family orientation and family interests and stories back then?
Oh yeah, oh definitely.
Yeah.
That really got me going. Because I mean, my profession as a librarian, it was always the thrill of the chase.
Yeah.
Trying to find that bit of information to answer somebody's question. So
Yes.
that's what got me going, and what still gets me going.
So when you came to Brattleboro, you were hired as a reference librarian.
That's right.
So it's
right.
all about that kind of research.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Just fielding all of those various questions that come across the reference desk now.
Yeah, I always thought that was a really tough job. That's the kind of thing you have to. Well, at that time, you had to have things literally at your fingertips,
Yeah, exactly.
right, and know where to go.
Yeah, that before the internet and any kind of networked information that you could use. You're trained in that, and there are, as you probably know, guidebooks to reference books that would help.
Has it become more difficult and easier to research?
Yeah, I mean, there's of course with the internet and all of the various channels of information that people can seek and bring in. There's, as we know, a lot of disinformation out there. So trying to, verify and validate that is difficult, because before you would, use an authored source, which may or may not be correct, but still, it went through a editorial process.
Yes.
And you felt pretty confident that that there was facts involved there.
So you're used to referencing and cross-referencing and cross-referencing, no matter what.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely in genealogical work, where you want to seek the original source.
Yeah.
Secondary sources, authored sources are not as credible as going after the original source, the original birth certificate, not an index entry from that certificate, which is a secondary source or derivative source, as they might call it.
Yeah. And now also you have, there's so many things, like you were saying, Ancestry.com, Finding Your Roots, the Genealogy Roadshow, DNA Research, all of those things are in the last, 15 years or less?
Exactly. FamilySearch.org, which is the Church of Latter-day Saints, has been around for a long time. They've been digitizing records since the late 30s on microfilm.
Oh.
So people could go to a family research center, which would usually be attached to a Mormon church, and they could request this microfilm. So, or go to Salt Lake City and research in the library there.
Right. Yes.
So, but now that's all, for the most part, been put online.
Yeah.
They've taken their microfilm, and you no longer can borrow that. It's all been digitized and is available through their free service.
Yeah. When you were in college, you studied history. That was your main point of focus and interest.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Anything in particular with history?
Well, since I was a product of the late 60s and early 70s, I was really interested in in Latin America. So I had an emphasis in Latin American history. All the revolutionary struggles that were going on at that time, drew my interest to those countries. And so that's sort of what I emphasized in my historical studies.
Yeah. What led you to library science?
Well, that's interesting. So, after I graduated, I didn't graduate with a teaching degree, which is what most, history majors do. And I was unsure as, what I was going to do. I didn't necessarily want to go get a master's in history. So I thought, what would be a practical way of using my, love of books and academia? And I thought, well, libraries. I'll become a librarian. So I chose the University of Texas because it was only one of two universities that offered graduate degrees in library science with a emphasis in Latin American bibliography.
Oh.
And so that's what we did.
That's
Packed
the
up the car,
package.
packed up. We got married on August 2nd, 1974, and then we were in a car like 2 weeks later driving to Austin.
Wow. Coming to Brooks, coming to Brattleboro, and coming to Brooks Library, you were you were already educated as a librarian. So
Yeah, I had the
you could-
credentials, I had the MLS, yeah.
Yeah. And so, and they needed a reference librarian. And
Yep.
back then, Maris Morrison was
Yep.
the director. And
Right.
I think for those of us, we're old timers now.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
we can actually say that.
Exactly, right. Way back when.
I know. I remember moving to Brattleboro, and that was the first thing I did, was to
Yeah.
go down, and Maris was there. She was a great librarian,
Yeah.
and she was there for many years.
Yep.
So you worked with her as well, and you were the reference librarian.
Mhm.
Those are back in the days, of
Yeah.
course, of card catalogs.
That's right.
And
Right.
all of that.
Jump up, go to the card catalog, look it up. You know.
Right. And I remember, for those of us with attachments to card catalogs, how it was like they took these beautiful things, like carrying a casket
Yeah.
out of the main library. And
Yeah, that card catalog was wooden, of course, and the
Yes.
new one that went into the quotes new building that was built in '67 was manufactured in Denmark, I think. It
Oh,
was
really?
Danish design,
Yeah.
very well made. and-
Yeah, I think that's something we are not going to touch on, is the old library.
Yeah.
For folks who have never seen photographs of the old Brooks Memorial Library, I encourage you to do so, but bring Kleenex, really. It was literally a paved paradise and put up a parking lot. It was next to
Yeah,
the
unfortunately,
next to the
yeah.
post office in downtown, and it was lovely. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, we're going to move
Yeah,
right
yeah,
along
yeah.
from there. At some point, you became automated, which was early 90s. And as I mentioned to you the
Yeah.
other day, I remember the automation, and it was called the Barn.
Right. Brooks Automated Resource Network. The staff and I were really, worried that people would feel that, they were losing touch with, they were losing touch with the card catalog. So we sort of wanted to try to make it, a friendly,
Yes.
recognizable, soft place.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And, I looked it up.
Oh, did you?
So we went first to the select board for funds in 1989, and the select board and the town meeting voted those down.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until 1995, in May of 95, is when we brought the barn up live.
For you as a librarian and as part of Brooks Library, what was that like for you to make that transition?
Well, it was. I think it was a little difficult. It was a long slog because we had to barcode all of the items.
Right.
So, there were like 65,000 items in the collection, all had to have a barcode, and we had a great volunteer effort at that.
Yeah.
We had to close, a certain portion of the day to do that, to get it all barcoded. And then those books had to be what they called retrospectively converted to machine-readable format, which meant that, we didn't have to type the catalog information in, but we had to search databases to
Yeah.
download those records into ours, so then we could add the barcode to them.
Yeah.
And then, of course, all the patrons needed to have barcodes.
And you had to listen to all the patrons
Yeah.
complain or ask questions
Right.
day
right.
after day after day.
Exactly.
I have to say, you are incredibly patient, and I remember that about you, being excellent at fielding those questions
Well,
and
thanks.
still maintaining your composure.
I had to practice.
Well, you got a lot of practice
Yeah, I
during
did
that
get a lot
time.
of practice, right.
You were around for the beginning days of the Literary Festival, which was in 2002. And I was trying to remember how that started. Can you talk about the seeds of that and how
Sure.
it began?
Sandy Rouse, at the time, was owner of the bookseller.
Right.
And Dick Burns was the owner of Collected Works, which was over on High Street, which is now the
Right.
Hermit Thrush Brewery.
So it used to be Green Mountain Books.
It used to be
Yes,
Green Mountain Books,
got
exactly
it.
right, yeah. And so we all met for lunch one day, and I hope I'm remembering this correctly, and we were thinking about doing a one book, one community read,
Yeah.
which used to happen where everybody would, and I think it might still happen through the Vermont Humanities Council, but everybody would read the same book and come together and discuss it. Well, somehow I think it was Sandy and Dick started thinking more broadly about it. So we had some other meetings and said, there are these book festivals happening in Nantucket and other places, and we should really, do that here instead of the one. And so that's how it started.
You were able to make some amazing contacts. There were so many authors nearby, but it was very impressive. L. Frank Grieve and Saul Bellow.
Saul Bellow was there for the first festival.
And Bob Stone, I can't remember, but I remember being squeezed into the bookseller.
Yeah.
And seeing all of these luminaries.
Right, that's right.
It was very
we had
exciting.
these smaller venues where we would just cram people in. Saul Bellow was at Candle in the Night. He gave his reading there amongst the Persian carpets.
The piles of rugs.
The piles of rugs,
Oh,
and that's
I
what
don't
people
remember
sat on,
Yeah, that's very cool. So since then, it's been 22.
Yeah, well, it was 20 years
20
last
years
year.
ago.
Yeah.
20 years ago. It's still going strong. You're still involved.
Yes.
And you've been doing some cool things like literary cocktails. Yeah.
Right.
And that's available for folks.
That's right.
to
We
tune in on.
record each one of those. We've been doing it now for 2 years, is it? Or 18 months, something like that. But
The pandemic years.
Right, they're the pandemic years. So those are all on our YouTube channel.
Yes. And also on BCTV, I believe
Yes.
that they get,
Yes, we do.
rerun
We
periodically.
submit it there, and then
Yes.
we upload it. Well, we upload it first, and then we submit it to.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So once again, folks, tune into BCTV
That's
because
right.
you never know what you're going to find.
Yep.
It will always be something interesting. And the Brattleboro Words Project is another very interesting literary endeavor in town.
Right, and that was started by Liz Weineman, who owns with her husband 118 Elliott Street, and a few other people in a committee, and they were able to get a fairly substantial National Endowment of Humanities grant to get that going, which documented all these places in our county and Brattleboro where authors came at one point or another.
Yeah, incredible, and very many different multimedia kind of things that
That's
go
right.
with that. You've also just come out with a new book, Print Town.
Print Town, right.
Yes, which
Right.
is really great. Again, available at local bookstores. And the library.
And the library.
So, your Life 2.0
Yeah.
came around right around the time you were thinking of retiring from the library.
Yeah, that's when I took action on it, but I'd been thinking about it for some time. I retired on a Friday, and then that following Monday, I enrolled in a certificate course on genealogical research at Boston University, which was a 26-week course, so it was really good. And I thought I knew a lot about genealogical research, which I really didn't. The methodology was important. I did another session called GRIP, which was a Genealogical Research Institute at Pittsburgh. So I went to Pittsburgh, and it was a week-long classes on genealogical research, and I did Italian genealogical research there.
Yeah, and you kind of specialize in Italian, Vermont, and there's something else.
Yeah, Colorado, Wyoming.
Oh, Colorado, Wyoming.
all my roots,
So, well, you have an affinity for those things.
Yeah.
I'm sure that along the way, you've had a lot of interesting discoveries. Is there anything in particular that you could share with us?
Well, sure. This one was part of my my certificate course, and the assignment was to go into a repository, which means an archive, and find a diary or letters or something that has not been digitized. And, because the tip of the iceberg is the digital content. What lies beneath is all of these diaries, letters, documents that have not been digitized. So I went into the Brattleboro Historical Society, and I was looking through their paper files, and I came across these letters. And as I started reading these letters, and there were 24 letters, these letters were written to one man by the name of Edward Edwards in 1888 through three mediums from his departed ancestors, which included his two wives, his father, his niece, his nephew. So these were letters from the afterworld. And they were really, really incredible to read. So that was my assignment, and you know, to sort of explicate these letters and figure out who these people were in the letters. And then I got this idea that, you know, maybe they could be published in some way. So I did an article for the Vermont History Journal, and just basically, you know, with the letters and their digital, you know, I'd scan them so people could see what, you know, what the actual handwriting was and so forth. So
that's what's pretty cool, right? Is to see the real handwriting on the page.
That's right. So that was kind of a neat, you know, discovery, because most people in my class said, "Wow, you know, we've never had a, you know, genealogy of the afterworld," and or letters from people who are dead.
From beyond,
Right.
that's really
You know.
cool. You've worked with, I assume, the Historical Society to a great degree, and have a relationship with them over the years, which is certainly serving you now as well.
It's a great society, and whenever I needed something, I would just shoot them an email, and they were really responsive. They would look it up for me.
A lot of what you're looking for is paper, I'm assuming, now.
Yeah, they have photographs and a lot of documents that are neatly organized in folders, city directories, which are very, very valuable.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have the library has a collection of those as well, but they're essential for any kind of, you know, genealogical research, because they document people's residence between census years. You know, they don't go back as far as the census, but they, you know, from maybe the mid-19th century on.
Yes, and there is someone from the Historical Society, I'm sure you know his name, which escapes me right now, but he posts quite a bit on Facebook, like just random photos of Brattleboro.
Those are great. I mean, that I've been told that their Facebook page is one of the most followed Historical Society Facebook pages in Vermont, and it might be even larger than Vermont.
Oh,
so
wow.
they have a great following. Yeah.
That's so interesting. Why do you think that is?
Well, because they're so active, and they're, you know, they're constantly providing content for people, and photographs always grab people.
Yeah,
you
they
know.
do. Well,
So-
it's fascinating. Yeah, I was just talking to somebody about how Main Street has changed in Brattleboro, and how I'd love to see some photograph, like a flip book almost of photographs. Right?
That would be great. They would have that, I'm sure.
Yeah,
You know.
that would be really fun to see, and it's such a sign of the culture. You know, what's on Main Street.
Right,
That
right.
old apothecary that used to be there, and
Right,
Mann's.
exactly. And Mann's, right?
Mann's, yeah, I know.
And the bookseller.
And the bookseller, yes, yeah. So other research services, what kinds of things do you do?
I'll just do about anything that so if I feel I can help somebody.
Yeah.
You know, most of it is genealogically oriented, but I have done a research on a farm in West Brattleboro, and you know, going back and researching the economy of the farm and the person that owned it, and much of that is available through the Census of Agriculture. So you can actually find out the farm and what they were producing, and you know, what they were growing, and the animals they had, and so forth. So
we have quite a few family farms. In this area. I mean, all of Vermont. But it's amazing to me, not only how many family farms there are, but how many kids are coming back to the farms.
Right, yeah, you see it. That's how we're getting some of our young people back, I think.
I know, I think so too. They want to go work out in the fields. More power to them.
Yeah, definitely. Got to be young for that.
You do a lot of cool things. So you play golf, you play tennis, you do racquetball. Let's talk a little bit about cooking. Okay.
Okay, sure.
Okay. Because it's something, as you said, both sides of your family were restaurateurs, so you spent time in restaurants. Did you pick things up by osmosis?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I was working in my uncle's restaurant, and I just remember the day I was throwing pizza and watching the astronauts land on the moon.
Oh.
There were family recipes, you know, passed down. My grandfather's recipe for making sausage, Italian sausage, which I finally did a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And I think it turned out pretty good.
Uh-huh.
I can't vouch to say that it was as good as his, but.
It's hard to,
Yeah.
taste memory is a fun
Yeah.
thing. Smell
Yeah,
memory is
definitely.
different, I think, but taste memory, yeah.
Definitely.
But you've come up with a ragu recipe that you're pretty
Yeah,
happy with?
Yeah, I really am. I call it my short rib calabrese ragu, and calabrese is from Calabria.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know why I named it that, except that I'm Calabrese. But
Makes
yeah, I
sense.
think it's really good.
Uh-huh.
I'd be happy to share the recipe with anybody.
Oh, well, that's very nice of you, because some of those are closely guarded secrets.
Yeah, not this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you also have traveled to Italy quite a bit.
Mhm. Yeah. Not in the, well, I was there in 2018 and 2016, and then before that in
Yeah.
the 90s. But yeah, at least 5 or 6 times.
Uh-huh. Any
Yeah.
plans for more trips?
I hope so. My wife and I are planning, sometime in the next year or two. She has 2 second cousins who live in Rome,
Oh,
and I've been on the trail of her grandfather, which is a really interesting story. He was a anti-fascist filmmaker in World War II.
wow.
And when I was there in Italy in 2018, I contracted with a couple of archivists, and we were able to go into the Italian Archivio di Stato, which is the archives in Rome, and I was able to exhume his secret police file,
Ooh.
because he was on Mussolini's list.
Oh.
And so there were all these letters that came back from the people in the field following where Antonio was going.
Uh-huh.
And he ended up leaving Italy. He was in Paris for a while.
Yeah.
He ended up leaving Italy and ended up in Spain, in Madrid, during the Spanish Civil War. And he was a cameraman for Luis Buñuel.
Really?
Yeah, so there's really this interesting story. He ended up dying there at the age of 37, but not before. He actually remarried. He never divorced his wife here. He just basically in Italy, he basically abandoned them because he was running from Mussolini.
Right.
But before he died, he had fathered another child. So there are these like second half cousins in Spain that we need to reconnect
That you've
with.
discovered.
That we've discovered,
Right.
yeah.
What a
yeah.
full life.
Yeah,
37
yeah,
years?
it's a real interesting life, and I'm trying to get a hold of some of his film that he made while he was
That'd
in
be
Spain.
so interesting.
Yeah.
And you are in the midst of dual citizenship? Is that
I
correct?
am, yes, I'm attempting to qualify for Italian dual citizenship. Italians can do this through the principle of iuris sanguinis, which means citizenship through blood.
Yes.
And if you are of Italian ancestry, you do not lose your Italian citizenship until someone in the direct line breaks it through like naturalization or becoming a citizen before the next person in the generation is born. So for my dad, who had been he was born in Italy, he naturalized before I was born. So it broke with him. But on the other side of the family, my mother was born before my grandfather naturalized, so she inherited and I inherited from her.
Wow.
But you have to prove all of this with birth, marriage, and death records, and a naturalization record that shows that this happened after that.
Good thing you're in the business.
Yeah, it's
get hold of
difficult.
this.
I actually work with somebody because there's all sorts of, because my grandfather Gaetano immigrated and he became Clyde. And then he was called Kite. And these names
Oh,
are on 3
geez.
different
Right,
documents.
right.
So you have to prove that these are all the same person.
Oh, man.
And the same thing happened with my grandmother, too, who died at a very young age. She was not even 30.
Yeah.
So I never knew her. She died in 1928.
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah,
yeah.
so you have to jump through a lot of hoops.
A lot of hoops.
and a lot of languages.
That's right. And you need to present this to the Boston Italian Consulate.
Oh.
And I finally got an appointment back in November. My appointment is in September of next year.
Wow.
Yeah, so.
Well, you'll be waiting on that, Jerry.
Yeah, well, it's given me a lot of time to make sure I have all of these things worked out.
Yeah. Jerry, thank you so much.
Well, thanks.
That was a real whirlwind.
Oh, good. Hope
Right?
it made some sense.
Oh, it makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Thanks for coming on the show.
All right, well, thanks for the invitation.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
Well, it's good to have you on, and we've been wanting to have you on because you're a pillar of the community.
A marble pillar. That's how old I am.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks to all of you for being with us today. Jerry Carbone, we're just so glad that he was our librarian, our director at Brooks Memorial Library for so long. So check out his site, The information will be at the end of the show, his genealogical site. Stay tuned. We will be back, and we look forward to the next show. Thank you.